Welcome back to the season finale of DuPont Presents The Power of Shunya, Quest for Zero. I'd like to shift gears to discuss safety, things like healthcare, safety at the workplace, drinking water, sanitation, various other endeavors to keep India's people safe. Dr. Devi Shetty, Chairman and founder of Naryana Health, joins us at this stage. Dr. Shetty, thank you very much for joining us on the show. But first, I'm going to address a question to Deepankar Gupta. Do you think that in India we're really embracing the concept of shunya when it comes to safety? Is India thinking about safety per se?
Far from it. We're not thinking of safety because somehow we feel that the dangerous work is being done by somebody else, and that we are protecting ourselves with high walls and our own generator and our own RO purifier and the rest of it. Safety will only become a concern at the societal level if we first and foremost think of citizenship, where everybody counts, and that is something we are quite a ways from. The second thing about safety, as I've noticed, it's not enough to tell people that you must wear a mask when you, say, spray pesticides. You have to have an overload of information. At the end of the day, however, with safe water, safe air, and safe environment, it really depends upon how we look at other people and do we see them just as we see ourselves. And that is the core of citizenship.
That's an important thought, but I also want to focus on safety from the healthcare prism. In the episode on healthcare, we introduced all our viewers to two innovations that tackled some of India's biggest challenges in the world of healthcare. A virtual liver that was developed by Strand Life Sciences and a low-cost hemoglobin measurement tool. Let's take a look.
The virtual liver is a computer system that mimics the functioning of the liver on a computer. It flags what are the molecules or drugs that are likely to have liver-related problems, at what doses could those problems be there, and are there particular individuals who are more susceptible to it.
It's just not about making the anemia shunya, it's also about making the inefficiencies of the country shunya.
Dr. Shetty, I'd like to come to you. What role do you think that science can play in finding a solution to India's healthcare issues? That is a very broad, overarching question that I'm putting to you.
The technology will help India to become the first country in the world to dissociate healthcare from affluence. We will be able to prove to the world that the wealth of the nation has very little to do with the quality of healthcare citizens can enjoy. And the next big thing what's going to happen in healthcare is not going to be a magic pill or a faster scanner or a new operation. It is going to be IT which will become the platform on which healthcare is delivered. Within the next 5 to 7 years, patients may not have to visit the hospital for a regular outpatient visit. Patient will sit at home and doctors will be online, and all these innovations can only happen in India, predominantly because we have brilliant software engineers.
Dr. Shetty, India's vulnerability to genetic and chronic diseases, it's well acknowledged. So the fact that there is actually very minimal access to timely diagnosis and treatment, is that a ticking time bomb for our country?
Yes, you are right. We are going to, or we are facing an epidemic of heart disease. We are already facing an epidemic of diabetes and virtually a large number of still lurking infectious diseases. We are going to face a major crisis from all these chronic diseases. Now, for us to have a process of early detection, we need to invest on training more medical specialists. So essentially, we are in a phenomenal position to change the way every piece of healthcare is expected to function.
And I'm going to change gears just a little bit to another very important sector, which is education. It's critical to any conversation about safety and protection of our people. Yet, as you know, Aditya Natraj, almost half of Indian pupils drop out of school by the age of 13. 1 in 10 people have received any form of job training. Here's how Shugata Mitra defined literacy in India in our episode on education.
Shogata Mitra is the brain behind School in the Cloud, set up in Chandrakona in West Bengal. It operates on a unique model of introducing children in remote villages to minimally invasive education.
Zero illiteracy in this country means the ability of everybody to be able to write their names on a piece of paper. I don't think that's an important ability anymore, so maybe the idea itself is obsolete. Would we rather have children who can write their names in ink on a piece of paper, or would we rather have children who can search the internet and find out things for themselves?
Aditya Natraj, how should we define literacy in India in 2014? And, how have we been defining it, say, over the last 5 years?
Well, so far, when you go by the census, literacy is merely saying, can you sign your name? This is really an extremely low definition, which might have been applicable maybe 30, 40 years ago, because that's all the aspiration of the country was. But today, if you see how it's being defined across the world, literacy in terms of reading and writing is merely one form of literacy. I should be able to read my mother tongue in order to be able to interact with the economy, read instructions on a manual, read a government permission form, read my birth certificate. But really, there are 3, 4 other forms of literacy. One is civic literacy. Do I know my rights as a citizen? Do I know how to ensure my rights are given? Do I know what happens when I go into a police station? 2, there's financial literacy. Do I know what happens when I get a loan at 10% rather than 18%? Do I know what is simple interest versus compound interest? Do I know whether a recurring deposit is better or fixed deposit is better? We're introducing many financial instruments with no literacy of how to use these instruments, right? And finally, technological literacy. Can you even imagine these children 20 years from now not needing to interact with computers? It's almost impossible to imagine a future like that. And that creates such a divide. People talk about, if I don't know English, I feel inadequate. If you don't know technology, you should feel how inadequate you are. So unless we expand the definition of literacy to include civic literacy, financial literacy, and technological literacy, I don't think we're really measuring anything.
You've expanded the definition of literacy to include all these 3. Are we doing enough to actually address the literacy gap then in the wider sense of the term?
Well, there's 2 ways of looking at it. One is to look at it as the glass is half empty, or the other way is to look at it as the glass is half full. I think on the half full count, I'm really excited about what has happened in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, there were 87 million children in India out of school. Let me just say that again, 87 million. We've reduced that to probably less than 2 million now. As a result of a massive expansion in number of schools, number of teachers, we've probably had the biggest expansion of a school system in the history of the world. However, I think now is when the grunge work is going to start, because we've sort of put the teachers and the students and everyone together. We've got children admitted to schools, but actually getting quality education, making sure these different forms of literacy are absorbed by children is a much tougher task. It's going to now be involving, a lot more. Now you're going to need some serious science and engineering to see why are children of first generation literates not learning fast enough.
Well, I'm going to very swiftly change gears from education to how we keep our population fed, i.e. agriculture, food security. This season, we've explored counterfeit pesticides, innovative hybrid seeds, mobile applications for farmers, the importance of crop diversification, and even remotely piloted aircrafts for investigating biological samples from farmers. Let's take a look.
This is a 3D technology eyes-on sticker, and it has around DuPont oval 10 dots arranged in a specific sequence, which farmers can identify with. This has a unique identification number, which then they can send it to the on SMS to our call center, which replies back to them, conveying whether it is a genuine product or it's a spurious or counterfeit product.
27P31 can take good amount of water stress both ways, when it is less as well as when it is excess. We have seen that farmer earns around 5,000 rupees per acre more in case he grows a hybrid or 27P31.
It helps you to connect, create an ecosystem where the farmer, the people who are trying to interact with the farmers, with the seed companies or contract farming companies, as well as the management, to keep in the loop, real time, what is the farmer issues, what he's trying to grow, when is the harvest.
We can fly the aircraft in the nearby fields, and we can collect the air samples at that particular area, and from the infection of these samples we can tell what particular biota is present in that particular area. So on basis of that we can just make results like what kind of pesticides we should use, or what kind of preventive measures that we should take to prevent the infection from these biotas.
Well, we know that India's climate is changing. We've experienced it with erratic droughts, erratic rain. But Mr. Kalsi, how good a job are we doing at working with the changing climate and yet aiming for a higher crop yield?
So we're facing issues from two fronts. The first being, the arable land is not going up. We have the same virtual land where we have to grow more. On the other side, we have a growing population to feed. And as the middle class continues to grow, the disposable incomes continue to increase, people wanting not only more quantity food, but more nutritious food. So the only alternate available to us is to create virtual acres, which means we need to produce much more from the same acres that are available. Hence, I think science has a big role to play here. How do we bring seeds to our farmers which are high yielding, can produce 20%, 30% more from the same output? How do we empower them with crop chemicals which are safe to the environment, low use rate, very targeted to the pest? And also focus on agronomy practices. How do we teach them about intercropping? How do we teach them about sowing practices? Bring in modern technologies in terms of either sowing, mechanical sowing, or mechanical harvesting. And also making sure that the farmer has the access to the right inputs, right seeds, right pesticides. And of course, last is to create those linkages between the farmers and the end markets.
In one simple word, yes or no, are we doing enough?
I think there's a great amount of effort going up, but we can continue to bring more and more technology to our agricultural farmers.
We must also stop the fears that surround this area and look to science. I mean, there's a lot of religious kind of fear making in the whole area connected with genetically modified crops, for example. We've just stopped the testing even. And Norman Borlaug, a great scientist, was horrified that India was doing something like that.
So keep the fears in check. On that note, so far we've looked back at some of the ingenious innovations introduced this season. After the break, we're going to look forward. How do we encourage a broader adoption of science and technology? How will Shunya go from a concept to a reality? Stay tuned as our audience and our expert panel looks to the future. At this stage, I'd like to thank Dr. Devi Shetty for joining us. We're back in a moment. You're watching DuPont Presents The Power of Shunya, Quest for Zero.